Welcome to the All Things Wildfire podcast, where we delve into the latest trends and hot topics in protecting properties against wildfire. So sit back, relax, and join us as we arm you against disaster.
So welcome, my friends, to another All Things Wildfire podcast. I'm always excited every time we have guests coming on, but man, Seth is someone that I've run into, I think on LinkedIn. Seth, is how we met, right? But guys, I really want to introduce this professional from the standpoint of this gentleman is one that leads the way for FireSafe councils, at least from my perspective, Seth, because we're involved with multiple FireSafe councils, but very few have as much activity, I believe, as what I've seen you do. So, Seth, let me have you introduce yourself and let us know a little bit about what you're doing, and then also kind of where you came from and how you got involved with this FireSafe Council here in Santa Clara.
Well, listen, first, it is an honor to be on your show. I listened to the inaugural podcast.
Okay.
And then I spent some time, and I actually listened twice to Ann Cope's IVHS podcast that you did.
Yes.
And that was a really great interview. And they're doing really tremendous things with their wildfire ready homes. So a pleasure to be with you, OP. Thank you very much. And as you said, I am the CEO of the Santa Clara County FireSafe Council. And as the name would imply, Santa Clara County includes Silicon Valley. But we have a lot of WUI in the area where we are, right? So it's a combination of urban, downtown San Jose, but Santa Clara County is very diverse population-wise, ethnicity-wise, language spoken, and also has a lot of CAL FIRES, high fire severity zone risk areas in our WUI. Yeah. And we also border on two other counties. So my FireSafe Council does a lot of work on the border of Santa Cruz County and San Mateo County with other FireSafe councils, because where they meet tends to be pretty high risk WUI area.
Now, really quick, Seth, I thank you for laying this out. You know, one of the things that I think about when I hear you speak about the wildland-urban interface is oftentimes the picture that's depicted in people's minds and in a lot of marketing that's out there now is you show a house that's literally in the forest, right? And it's like, that's not where you live. Like, you are in an area that's very heavily populated. Your neighbors are 5 feet away typically. So can you kind of unpack, like, to me, I feel like this is a stigma that as you know, people and professionals in this wildfire prevention or wildfire knowledge or education piece, we have to start letting people know that the wildland-urban interface is not your house in the woods. It really means something different. Can you unpack that for us?
Yeah, and that's such a terrific question, because I agree there's such a misnomer or misperception about the WUI. I mean, sure, I'd love to live in a cabin 200 miles away from everybody. Yeah. But the reality is, you know, the WUI areas are really increasing in California over the last 15 or 20 years, right? There's been a lot of studies on the growth of the WUI, and it's the highest population growth in California in terms of where people are moving to. And it's not in the proverbial forests, right? It's in suburban areas that tend to meet up where, you know, the vegetation also kind of crisscrosses, right? So you can have homes that are very close to each other and still be in the WUI. And in fact, that's the biggest challenge, OP, that we see and that we work on, because the WUI area is also where, in terms of you know, high risk wildfires, that's where the majority of homes burn. And WUI fires have a lot of components, right? They have trees, they have homes, they have cars, they have PVC. So it's not your typical wildfire smoke, but in fact, it's quite toxic. So yeah, we serve the WUI areas, and it's where most of the population is looking to move to that's non-urban.
Yes. No, thank you for that. I think we have to continue to spread the word that the WUI is really not us moving up. It's really, you know, looking at the risk factors that we have that contribute to the vulnerabilities to wildfire. Seth, let me jump into this, man. number one, you're the CEO of Santa Clara FireSafe Council, and you've been there less than a couple years. 2.5 years. Okay. And so, Seth, give us a little bit of background. Like, where did you come from? What's your expertise? What got you into this process of saying, hey, look, I want to be part of this 501c3 and I want to help this awareness? What triggered that?
Yeah. And, I appreciate the question because I probably have a different path or trajectory than probably most of your guests, right?
Okay.
I didn't grow up in the fire service.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't come from a fire ecology background. But my career started, mid to late 80s. And I was in the consulting and technology industry. I started in software, embedded systems and consulting. I started, as a sales rep. And then as time went on, I wound up running global sales organizations. And most of these were kind of technology-centric organizations. And then as I got a few more gray hairs, I wound up running the operations and the businesses, across a variety of technology issues. And I grew up mostly on the East Coast. I'm a New York, Philly, kind of Boston guy originally.
Okay.
And my wife and I both worked at an organization that got acquired by General Electric, and she was based here in California in the Bay Area. And I was living in Boston at the time, and I wound up taking over the operations for that operational area in the New England area.
Okay.
And she moved to Boston. A couple of years later, we got married, and I promised her I'd always come back to California. But, I've been coming out here since the mid to late 80s pretty regularly with staff and clients. And then, as I noticed, as a resident, I remember my wife and I were at a trip when they opened the Getty Museum, the new Getty Museum down kind of your way.
Yeah.
And I forget which wildfire it was, but we were traveling up to 5. And the ash just started to fall, on our windshield. And, obviously we weren't close to the flames, but as time went on and through some of the other organizations I ran, I had staff that lived up in the Tubbs fire in Santa Rosa.
Yeah.
And I had vendors and customers that had their facilities burned. I had vendors and people that worked on my floor in a different organization that lost some of their livestock, that lost their horses, lost their house. And then when I was running another organization, I had an office up in Reading, northern part of the state. And my staff was always evacuated for wildfires. And so, there were days where we had to shut the office because we couldn't have anybody come in. So I really just started to take a personal interest in what's going on, right? What is this all about? And as I peered under the hood, I really found that, boy, it's probably the most complex issue you can imagine, right? There is no single silver bullet to mitigate and tamp down wildfires. You can't suppress your way out of it. It's not a technology only solution. It's nothing that Silicon Valley, where I live, can solve, but it's something that they could be part of a kind of complex solution set. And so about 15 years ago, I shifted into running nonprofits and serving on a number of foundation boards. And so I've got a background in the private sector, in running nonprofits and serving on nonprofit boards. And when somebody who I knew told me that the FireSafe Council opportunity opened up, I thought it'd be a really great fit for me to, kind of take an area of passion, learn, and then see how we could take the FireSafe Council's roots and really put a Silicon Valley lens on it and help them be more creative.
Boom. Seth, you said some things, man, that I'm like I want to dive into a couple of things. So you said this problem is not only a technology solution, right? It's a combination, and I really love how you put it. There's no silver bullet, right? It's a combination of tech plus practical application with boots on the ground, and so I love that you shared that, because I think that has led to some of the success that you have had in these grants that you have received, hundreds of thousands and probably millions of dollars, and I'll have you share that in a second. But how powerful is that you've been able to take your entire experience, and again, like you said, you're not part of the fire service, you just as a consumer and someone who's experienced some of this devastation are thinking, hey, there's something here. Let me find out more about it. And now you're ramped up to be the CEO. And let's talk about how you've been able to accomplish and receive these grants. Because, look, we deal with a lot of FireSafe councils, Seth, and man, the things that you're doing are to me are very encouraging and are probably very encouraging to many other FireSafe councils. So I hope that they take interest in listening to this recording, because I'd like you, if you don't mind, share how many grants you receive, the dollar value, but then specifically when you were putting this together, what was your vision for the results of what that money is to do for your community?
Sure. There's a lot to unpack there, so I
sorry, go for it.
But no, but it's a great question, and let me say I'm the beneficiary. I've got a great board of directors. I've got a tremendous advisory board. Many of these people have 30, 40 years in the fire service. They are fire ecologists. They are foresters. They're researchers. They may be academics working for San Jose State University or affiliated with Stanford's Woods Institute or UC Berkeley School of Forestry. So I've had a lot of people, take me under my wing or take me under their wing, so to speak, and give me, an understanding of what it's been like, and more importantly, the arc of how fire has changed, over the last couple of generations. Plus, you talk to any of the old, fire folks, and 30 years ago or 40 years ago, a big fire may be $10,000 or 10,000 acres, right? I mean, you could spend 25 years or 30 years in the Forest Service and maybe not see anything over 50,000 acres, right? And now you have these kind of conflagrations, right, that are going 100,000 acres, 200,000 acres, and the spread of these fires is becoming faster and more challenging to tamp down, right? So, fire has really changed. And I get to experience and learn from all the folks that have, the battle scars that have been, hot shot crews and, parachuting in to put the fires out. And so it's a great experience. And so, we are one of, a couple of hundred FireSafe councils in the state of California. There's a lot of them, right? And most of them are volunteer organizations. And ours started just like the majority of them. It was a grassroots organization started by people that lived in the WUI. Some had a fire service background, some had other backgrounds, and they wanted to help lend a hand to the county fire department and the other fire departments because they recognized, even 20 years ago, that there's a lot of risk happening with fire, right? So fast forward 15, 18 years, my organization really started doing a lot of county chipping, very typical path for a lot of FireSafe organizations, right? Doing chipping, OP. And then we moved up kind of the skill chain and started to do escape routes and fuel breaks. And before I joined, I came on at the tail end. The FireSafe Council won a contract to do the Highway 17 fuel break. And that was a 6.5 mile fuel break that connects Highway 17 and Los Gatos, as we say up here, on up the hill. Okay. And at that time, I think, which was 2017, it was the largest of the 35 priority projects for Governor Newsom. And so our role there really became the glue, the collaborator. We were working with Caltrans, we were working with County Fire, we were working with PG&E, and we really became the organization that put it all together, that managed the project, and got everybody collaborating around the campfire together to make sure that we can execute. And I joined, in the waning months of that project, but thought that would be a really great template for what we can do. So, most FireSafe councils are pretty much an exclusively grant-funded organization, right? They're all 501c3 nonprofits. And the majority of the funding comes from CAL FIRE. Maybe some of the organizations have county grants. And grants are fantastic, but I've been running nonprofits for 15 or 16 years. And one of the challenges is, if you really peel back the onion and look under the hood, many grants aren't actually covering the cost of the actual project. Right?
Let's talk about that, Seth.
I mean, I think I want to hear more about that. Go for it.
Yeah, no, well, I was in human services, and I've got a passion in the background for philanthropy. So I ran organizations that focus on vision, and we got a combination of federal grants. And as we would really do the P&L or the profit analysis, maybe a grant has a 10 or 12% indirect rate.
Okay.
And without getting into the weeds on what that means accounting wise, the reality is here in Silicon Valley, it's expensive to live, right? And most grants, particularly the grants that the FireSafe Council gets, they're multi-year grants. So the project could be a 3 or maybe a 5-year grant. Well, that forces you to bid accurately 100%, because who can predict what happens over 3 or 5 years?
Right.
Labor rates go up, cost of living goes up. And so as I peered under the hood, I really saw that, our indirect rate was, higher than the 12 or 11% that we were paying. And I love our funders. They're great, but sometimes they're also long payers, right? So when we get some of our grants, they have to go through a lot of different channels. And sometimes it takes 120 days to make the cash register ring before the money is in our pocket. So as I looked at that and engaged our board, it was clear that if we wanted to use the Silicon Valley savvy, right, we needed a way to develop other revenue streams. Clearly as a nonprofit, we've got the capacity to solicit donations and funding, typical philanthropic work.
Right.
But as we decided to look at the strategy, we wanted to become a deeper, more significant partner to our clients, which are the municipalities, the local towns, and even the individual homeowners. And, kind of peering through that lens, strategically, we said, well, look, there's a lot of technology happening in wildfire, whether it's things like camera systems, Alert Wildfire, Pano, Clara. There's a lot happening with remote sensing, right? So that you can do, wildfire smoke analysis and detect wildfire smoke hundreds of miles away from where you're located. For us to become less dependent on grants and to scale, I wanted to put a technology lens on that and develop a portfolio of 6 or 7 products that we can resell, act as a VAR, kind of using, my prior sales hat, where we could become a value-added reseller and help get new technology deployed, pilot tested here locally with the fire services and the various municipalities, and hopefully rolled out in a way that will make the people here in Santa Clara County safer and more engaged in wildfire mitigation and defensible space. Because you can't get away from defensible space is absolutely a responsibility everybody has. And that's one of the things I really like about your firm and Allied, because you really are engaged deeply in all facets of defensible space and home hardening. And so that has to be part of the solution.
Absolutely. Seth, man, again, I think part of you being cutting edge and part of you being able to receive some of this grant funding and helping the local municipalities, cities, and even the residents has to do a lot with your style of thinking and your style of leadership. Because I got to say, Seth, when I speak to most FireSafe councils, and I want to be careful here, man, your thinking is much more progressive. I'll just put it that way, because other FireSafe councils are just like, oh, here's the funding. This is what we're going to do. And we're going to keep sending the same message, and really not making much progress. But having your sales skill of leading other companies, you realize, hey, the grant may not be sufficient money. So how else can we produce and generate more energy, more activity, so we can get this message out further? And like you said, experiment, try this, try that. Like, we have to have things on the ground, always experimenting to see what's going to work. Absolutely. And what's not going to work, right?
Absolutely.
So I love it.
There's no crystal ball, right? Yeah. I grew up in industries where we did a lot of pilot testing. We were rolling out new technologies, right? Venture funded, kind of early stage funding. Yeah. And you have to pivot, you have to attack, because what you think will work on the ground oftentimes winds up differently than you thought. And I'm not saying that what we do is right for every FireSafe council, right? That's an individual decision, but I'm focused on sustainability and making sure that this organization that has a 20-year history can be around for another 50 years and can deepen the skill set that we provide to our stakeholders. You know, chipping is important. That's always going to be a key mix in defensible space.
Right.
But there are a lot of folks out there that do great chipping, right? How can I be a deeper partner to homeowners? And how can I help and augment the county of Santa Clara and all of the agencies that we interface with? Because we're an independent nonprofit. We're not a county agency. But you had said earlier, OP, over the last 15, 16 months, we won a $7.5 million CAL FIRE forest health grant, right? It was the largest forest health grant that CAL FIRE awarded that year. Wow. And we're treating over 1,000 acres in the Los Gatos Creek watershed. We're partnering, so it's really a public-private partnership. We formed a collaborative with the Mid-Peninsula Open Space District, Santa Clara County Parks, a private entity called San Jose Water, which manages a lot of infrastructure, including critical reservoirs and watershed areas. And so we want to provide both forest health treatment, treating sudden oak death, which is a big issue where I am, and also providing wildfire mitigation. So we won that grant. We've been managing it now for the last year and a half. We won a $1.5 million grant from CAL FIRE to do a combination of 4 fuel breaks and escape routes in the southern part of the county.
Nice.
We were just awarded about 4 weeks ago, a county coordinator grant where we're going to serve as the county coordinator for all of Santa Clara County. And our mission there is to track who's doing what in the way of wildfire, right? Who's doing prescribed burns, who's doing escape routes, build a database that we can share across all the stakeholders and report to the Board of Supervisors in Santa Clara County so we can make informed decisions about what projects might be ripe for funding or other kind of financial support. And lastly, we're also leading, as I speak, the update of our community wildfire protection plan. We won a $250,000 grant to update that plan that was done in 2016, nice, before my time, but bring it forward and implement some new mapping and work with CAL FIRE's just released high fire severity zones and include things like technology, home hardening, defensible space, et cetera.
Man, I love that. I think that, the CWPPs have to like almost get, revised on a every other year basis, at least, to really have a finger on the pulse for the community. But I want to touch on something you said earlier. You had mentioned the grant before this last one was more of information and community and really everyone understanding what everyone's doing, right? I think a lot of people, even someone like me years ago, would think, oh yeah, everyone's always communicating. Everyone always knows what the other person is doing in a community, in a city, in a county, but that is absolutely not the case. And it's like the efforts are happening over here, but not enough people know about it. Then there's efforts over there, not enough people know about it. But bringing everyone together, it really can maximize the not only the effectiveness, but the sustainability in the future. So can you touch on what got you to really want to like bring those things together?
Using your word, boom.
Boom, let's go. Yeah.
That is a challenge that's not germane to just wildfire, right? I used to work in the private sector and ran organizations. Sales and marketing would often point the fingers at each other, right? When a deal went south and didn't close because they weren't working well together. And it's very common, right? We all have heard the term silos, right? And silos exist, in any form of business or nonprofit. But when you get into something as complex as a county or state government, there's a lot of different budgets, money flows from various different streams and funding sources. And so what the California FireSafe Council has recognized with CAL FIRE is there's a lot of great work happening in the county, but it tends to often be siloed, where, just as you said, one group doesn't necessarily know what the other group is doing, or they're not aware of where this project work is taking place. And so the county coordinator grant is a tool for us to get everybody around the proverbial table together, right? And share stories. What are we doing? Who's funding it? What help might you need? What kind of work are you doing? Who's doing defensible space? Who's doing home hardening projects? Yeah. Who's doing fuel breaks? Who's doing escape routes, right? And then have a way and a vehicle through the database that we're going to create to share that information so that we can all hopefully increase our funding flows, right? We'll be able to work with our partners better, and hopefully we'll be able to save the county money and our partners money, because if we can collaborate, we'll get economies of scale and more effectiveness, right? So it's really important, particularly in the world of wildfire. There's so many organizations just in Santa Clara County that have a piece of the wildfire puzzle, right? So how do we get a holistic look at that? And so that's what the county coordinator grant is going to allow us to do, and strengthen our communications with all of these various entities. That's the plan anyway, right? That's our.
I love that. And Seth, I think if the FireSafe councils in California and in other states can take anything away, I think it's this piece of like, let's be the ones that gather the information, that help people connect with the different things that are going on, to get more leverage on this battle that we have, with wildfire. Like it's not going anywhere. We have to begin to adapt more quickly as to how we can be more successful against it. So now, Seth, I would like to transition into like we're considering working together with some partnerships, right, with your FireSafe Council, and I'm very excited to provide the home hardening, the fire retardant applications, all those things. But like, if you have other, if you could speak to the philanthropists, right? Speak to them, the people that do want to donate, the other service providers that would like to help Santa Clara and help your mission. What would you say to them to say, hey, let's do this together? Because part of what we're going to be doing together with you is some of our things are going to be gifted to Santa Clara FireSafe Council because we believe in what you're doing. And so, and I'm tapping into even my deeper vendors to say, hey, let's give, right? Let's give more so we can get the word out faster. What message do you want to send out to the different people that could make an impact with your FireSafe Council?
Well, that's a great question, and I appreciate you asking. Thank you. I think one of the challenges that we're working through is historically, right, wildfire mitigation support wasn't traditionally something that you saw a lot of philanthropists doing, right? I think there was a perception, well, my tax dollars, my property taxes, right? They go to the county, they go to the fire agencies. Why do I need to perhaps reach into, my philanthropic vehicles? And the reality is there's a lot that the counties and states are doing, but this problem is expanding and exploding, and no agency can do it all. And, as someone that has served on a dozen plus nonprofit and foundation boards and chairs boards, Silicon Valley has a real philanthropic ethos, right? There's a lot of family foundations, as an example here. Okay. And some of those foundations focus on what the philanthropy world calls place-based, meaning that they provide most of their funding in the backyard to where the families live, right? But in addition, we've got excellent foundations here, like the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation, right? They just 2 or 3 days ago announced $100 million multi-year initiative around wildfire. Wow. Things like indigenous and cultural burning, learning from the tribal capacity in the county that has, engaged fire successfully for thousands of years, right? So they're focused on serving the low-income communities that, happen to live in the most fire or fire-prone areas, but don't get all of the resources that the wealthier communities get. So we've got great funders here like the Hewlett Packard Foundation, the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation, and others. So my job is to convince them, but to convince the VC world that I come from and the private equity world that I come from, that there's a role here for you to play too, right? Because you're going to get exposure to some really interesting startups and really interesting technology. There's a lot happening in the way of machine learning and a lot happening in the way of artificial intelligence, AI, for example, in the wildfire space. So if you're a Silicon Valley philanthropist, invest with us, right? We can take different types of philanthropic vehicles, whether it be a donor advised fund, whether it be a PRI, a program related investment. So there's a way that they can participate, that they can give back to their community, but also perhaps get a lens on the latest technology in AI and machine learning and other areas that can inform their portfolio of investments. So, my job is to kind of lead that pitch story to the funders, work with my board members, and I'm fortunate that we've got an engaged board. And, at the end of the day, we're successful because of the staff.
Yes.
I'm the point person, I'm out in front, but we couldn't do what we've done, and we wouldn't be where we are if it wasn't for the excellent staff that we have, a combination of former firefighters, people that have a background in fire-wise communities and fire ecology. And so we're looking to communicate that you have a role to play, Mr. and Mrs. Technology philanthropist or provider. Engage with us, make a difference.
I love it. Seth, like that, that gets me so excited just to hear you say those things, because it's so true. It's like, hey, Mr. Silicon Valley investors, like, hey, provide investment to an amazing cause, and in the interim, let us help you learn about what's happening out here, because you might be able to tap into some technology that is going to allow your stock to even blow up even more, right? So really, it creates these opportunities that if these companies, these philanthropists, these investors do make an investment to help the community, to help the residents, to help the cities, it really could propagate this motion of what else is coming, and then wham, something or some things hit that say this makes a lot of sense. And then the investment comes in from the people that are willing to make these investments, and now this technology or this service really takes off. And you know what? Look, I grew up in a home where when you talk about money, it was kind of a bad thing. But the reality is, we need money, right? Your FireSafe Council needs money. All FireSafe Councils need money. And so the only way that we can make progress is let's get some money in the door so we can get some action. And so I think the flow of cash has to continue to happen. And I love the cities and the states giving money for grants, but like you said, you're a little handcuffed sometimes on what you can do with that. Maybe not allowing you to do as much as you would like.
Yeah, and look, OP, real quick, that's a challenge that every nonprofit faces, but fire safe councils in general have been historically grant-based. And there's opportunities for corporate philanthropy, right? Many of the large technology companies right here where I live, right, their executive staff, their employees, they actually live in the WUI. Right?
Yes.
So, there's an opportunity to be altruistic and support it, but there's also an opportunity to make sure that your home and your properties are protected and your employees are safe, and there's continuity around business disruption strategies, because if a wildfire were to hit, how do your workers, does the cell towers, are they going to go out? What happens? And so that's a great dialogue, and that's one of the things that really, as you and I have got to know each other, the work that Allied is doing, and the opportunity to bring that up here to the Santa Clara area, because home hardening, defensible space, and the solutions that you provide are a real critical spoke in the wheel of, wildfire mitigation.
Absolutely. And we're excited to be engaged with your communities and really helping on really actionable items that we can take for your residents, for your communities to help them. Seth, let me ask you a couple more questions, and then I'll let you add on whatever you like. You spoke about your team, and I know like the support team largely goes unnoticed. You're kind of the one out there. You're the face. You're making things happen. You're the salesperson. You're the persuader. You're all these things. But what advice can you give other FireSafe councils on how they can build a team of support around each other? Because I would imagine that in these voluntary positions, you may have some people that don't believe in the vision as much as others, and you still have this possible conflict. I don't know if that's a rampant situation or not, but what advice can you give other FireSafe councils on what they can do to build a supporting staff like the way you have?
No, thank you. And I think one of the things that differentiates the Santa Clara FireSafe Council from the majority of others is our staff is paid, right? So we have paid staff, and that funding is, in part supported by the grants, but that's also why we need additional funding that you and I have been talking about, because the grants don't cover all of the staffing costs that we have, right? But your question is, what advice? Well, I think what I would say is be open to thinking differently. I'm not a big fan of the term outside the box, but what I found in my career and what I think has served me well, and for many of the companies I work for, is bring in people from diverse backgrounds, right? And that's a combination of cultural backgrounds. But if I had everybody that just worked in wildfire their whole career, they would come with a very specific lens.
Yes.
And that's critical because they're experts in their area of focus. But broadening the skill set, bringing in people that haven't worked in fire, but maybe have worked in other industries, right? They put a different lens on things. And it's that kind of what I call creative mix, right? And when you have your strategic discussions with your team, that's where those aha moments can happen, right? Because you bring in people with different perspectives that my staff tells me things that I wouldn't have naturally thought of often, right? But they go, have you thought about this? Or this is a challenge. And so I would say be open to being creative, and particularly for FireSafe councils, take measured risks, right? Mm-hmm. For any organization, you can't cut your way to success. In my private sector and in somewhat in my nonprofit experience, OP, I've done a lot of restructuring and turnarounds. Yeah. Right. And you can stop the hemorrhaging, for example, if you're losing money, but you're not going to grow. And more importantly, you're not going to have the impact on reducing the risk in your community from wildfires if you don't think creatively, if you don't partner with a lot of other entities. Because wildfire, it's really about collaboration. There's a gentleman that I work with. We do a lot of work supporting Santa Clara County Fire Department. And there's a gentleman who runs their wildfire group. His name is Mike Matheson. And he told me collaboration, 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 and more collaboration.
Yes.
And that has really stuck with me because at the end of the day, no one company, no one FireSafe council is going to solve or mitigate our way out of this, right? We have to think together. And working in a collaborative framework isn't always easy, right? Because your idea might not be the idea that gets implemented, but you got to be okay with that.
Yes. For the greater good. I love that. Man, it's so good, Seth. I really do feel that this has helped me, and I hope it helps others, really, like you said, expand on the different specialties that we need to pull from, where it's not just, this myopic view of this is the way you solve it, but really, how can we take others' views and really implement and make a difference? I love it. I love that. Seth, I have another question for you. With regards to homeowner involvement with the FireSafe councils, is that something that is something that most fire safe councils would like, where when you have your meetings, you have a lot more activity from the community? And if so, what could a homeowner learn, right? We know that the homeowners, I talk about the carrot and the stick, as far as like, sometimes people will make a decision because they have something to gain. And then other times there's a lot of pain over here, so now I'm going to move and do something. And insurance has really been part of the pain, right? But what can you say to the residents on whatever their goal is, whether it's something that they want to be safer, or whether, hey, I need to make a difference in my insurance policy to see what I can do to control that in the future? What can they gain from being part of a fire safe council like yours?
Well, look, I think a lot of things. OP, you know this, right? You're in the disaster business, and disasters tend to take a back seat in people's mind until they're personally affected.
Yes.
Right. Right. You can tell somebody you need to take your diabetes medication to keep your diabetes at bay, and all of a sudden, right, they realize that their diabetes has gone through the roof because they haven't been taking their diabetes medication like they should.
Right.
And it's the analogy kind of holds, right? And so the challenge that all fire safe councils have, even for ones that really live in areas that have constant burns and multiple evacuations year over year, it's how do you sustain engagement, right?
Mm-hmm.
People have lives, right?
Yes.
Life happens. So how do you sustain the engagement before or after the fire, right? So we have a great community, and we have a number of people that we interface with, but we can do better, and the community can do better, right? And so one of the things that we're doing is we have a partner, one of the towns that we support. They're very creative, and they're coming up with a way to be able to give their residents rebates by maintaining their defensible space, right?
Okay.
So they have a checklist, Class A roof, a lot of the things that you see with the IBS, wildfire home, or
Yes.
Clara's Ready for Wildfire initiative. So they're doing things like Zone 1 and Zone 2 defensible space maintenance,
Okay.
Class A roof. And then they're giving rebates because, every fire safe council has the stories of, we came in and we did a home inspection for this homeowner. We came back 6 months later and they haven't got around to doing anything. You know that. You see that. Right?
I see it. I see it. Yeah.
You probably get the calls from the folks that wish they would have taken that action, right? And now they got to rebuild.
Yeah.
Right. So I would say, think about ways that you could track the actions that they take, right? That you can be able to keep track and show the progress. And then you've got a tool to go to the insurance companies and you can say, we can help de-risk your portfolio, right?
Yes.
We could show you the homeowners that are doing all the things they need to do. And then you can think creatively about how you want to insure that community, right? You might insure this parcel, but not that parcel, because one is doing the things they need to do and the other hasn't done all the things they need to do.
Right.
So it's about engaging, the community and keeping them sustained in a way that they get value from.
Boom. It's interesting when you say, you have one parcel or homeowner or resident that does the work they have to do, and then maybe the other two nearby don't, and then another one does. I remember having a conversation with an insurance carrier a year and a half ago, and I said, look, how are you making these decisions whether to insure or not, right? And so a lot of this is proprietary for them. Like, they keep it close. They don't tell anyone how they're making their decisions. But this one person said, hey, look, here's the deal. Like, if the customer does the thing or the things they need to do to make their home more wildfire resistant, great. That's a requirement that we are now requiring of them. It doesn't mean we're going to give them insurance. It just means that now we're going to take a different look at this parcel. And what he said, Seth, is they pull back so much, and then they say, okay, I have one parcel here, I have another one here, and if they have too many, Seth, they say, hey, the risk is still too high for us. in those areas. And so it's really interesting how they're making these decisions, and I don't blame them because they've been losing money for many years. However, to the homeowners, to the neighborhoods, to the communities, I would say the more that we can get our neighbors involved to make our communities collectively more attractive and safer, man, we all begin to win, because now we can go to market and say, hey, Mr. Insurance Companies, here's the 55 homes that live in our community, and we've home hardened, we've done all these things. Now we want you to accept our risk. And I think there's going to be so much value in that. It's just a matter of keeping that going, like you had said, the sustainability of people learning and doing the work.
I just want to add on, because I think you're really spot on where, and what you just mentioned is really an area where technology has taken hold.
Mm-hmm.
I've been fortunate over the last 2.5 years to, become friends with people like Nancy Watkins from Millman and
Yes.
Robert Kowalski from CoreLogic, right? And they're involved in creating algorithms, right, for assessing parcel layout, home construction,
Yes.
all of those kind of risks. And technology is really helping to lead the way as the state of California begins to revisit how it prices insurance, and historic catastrophe models that have been kind of the historic vehicle to look back, right? Where were wildfires happening before? And being able to now be more effective through the use of technology and algorithms to say that risk is mitigated enough so that I'm able to write that policy and not force somebody onto the FAIR plan, right?
Yes.
Which is really a backstop of last resort, but it's very expensive and you probably won't get all the coverage that you had. And I see that all the time in Santa Clara County here. I see a lot of people that the underwriters have pulled out from, or have limited their coverage, or required them to go onto the FAIR plan because they won't write policies in that area.
Right.
And the work that we do and the partnerships that we and you can have with insurance companies can help them see that there's a better way for them to manage their portfolios, manage risk, and ensure that everybody can be safer from wildfire.
Boom. That feels like a mic drop right there, Seth. I love that. Seth, we're almost up to an hour here, which is probably one of the longer podcasts, but I can probably go on for at least another hour. But I'll ask you, is there anything that you want to say, want to mention before we wrap things up? Because again, I feel like you're very progressive in your FireSafe Council in Santa Clara, the success you guys have had. And there are others that are having similar success, but I think there could be room for many, many more FireSafe Councils to have that. But is there anything that you want to add before we close?
Well, first, I want to thank you for the time today. It's really, I could talk a couple hours with you anytime, right? But I think you have to sit down and understand what's right for your FireSafe Council, right? Where are you in the state? What are the threats and challenges you face? For us, we're here in the heart of Silicon Valley, right? I've got UC Berkeley, Stanford, Craig Clemens and his team at the Wildfire Interdisciplinary Research Center, all within a 10, 15-mile radius of me. Shame on me if I didn't tap that talent.
Yes.
Shame on me if I didn't try to leverage that and bring what Silicon Valley is good at, right? Which is iterating on a problem and coming up with a solution and hopefully bringing that to greater scale, right? So it's about being able to work effectively with your board and be able to work effectively with your stakeholders, listening to them, understanding what problems they have, and then stepping back and say, how could we at the FireSafe Council be a solution provider to help solve those problems? And so it's not easy, right? We don't succeed at everything we do, but we're willing to iterate and we're willing to be creative and test things.
I love that. And Seth, I feel like going back to one of the comments you made, going out and grabbing and attracting different talent from different skill sets allows you to be able to get the word out, get some revenue in, make an impact. So I really, really do like the way that you've outlined that. Mr. Seth Skelet, thank you so much for being on today. I really do appreciate you. I look forward to the work and the collaboration that we're going to be doing together and making an impact with your FireSafe Council, with your communities. So totally looking forward to, and looking forward to meeting you in person here in the next, maybe the next month or so, for sure.
I hope so. Look, it's been my pleasure. I'm grateful to you and Vincent, and look forward to future collaborations.
Awesome. Thank you, Seth. Appreciate you, brother.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
That's all for this episode of All Things Wildfire. If you like this episode, be sure to subscribe to our show and follow us on social media to stay up to date on all things wildfire. And as always, thanks for listening.